The preseason taught us a lot in fantasy football this year, and so here are the things that you need to know for your fantasy football drafts or for your already drafted fantasy football leagues to make sure that you are on top of things. First of all, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt has been the talk of the town, aka Bill, which is the best name of all time. Bill Krosky-Merritt did not play this week. Actually, this week was a lot more about who didn't play rather than who did play, and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt not playing this week is a very good sign for people who drafted Bill Krosky-Merritt, like Mason, unfortunately, or people who are going to snag him late in drafts because nobody in their casual leagues knows his name. Since he did sit, it looks like he's going to be the starter there in Washington. It looks like Chris Rodriguez, who did play tonight, is actually going to end up behind him. Austin Eckler also didn't play, and so you can expect a pretty, in my opinion, heavy running back by committee backfield. I don't think it means JCM is going to be an absolute smash pick this year. The hype is getting a little high right now for me going up into like the 8th round of fantasy football drafts. However, I will say it is a good sign that he rested tonight, and it does show that he is probably going to be at least one of the guys that's going to start there, if not the only starter there. In the Browns backfield, we had some news as well. Obviously, Quinshon Judkins hasn't signed yet, right? We all know that. You've talked about it all week. We've heard about it. Trust us, we know. Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson look like both of them are going to get some first-team reps in all games pretty much until he comes back. And so it's going to be a split between Dylan Sampson. It's going to be a split between Jerome Ford. Both of those guys could be fantasy relevant, and who knows? Dylan Sampson being the rookie, the guy who hasn't been there before, maybe he comes out and proves himself early and he becomes fantasy relevant early in the season after maybe beating out Jerome Ford for some of the snaps. But for now, I would think that they're going to lean on Jerome Ford, at least some, because he is the veteran presence there and because they know what they're getting with Jerome Ford. And so I expect these two running backs to battle it out for the Cleveland Browns at the beginning of the season. Daniel Jones, obviously the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. This was news earlier this week, but this is stock up for a couple guys in this offense. Josh Downs, it would be a stock up for, but since he's still dealing with the hamstring injury, you didn't actually see him play. It's going to be mostly stock up for Tyler Warren here. And Tyler Warren, again, every time you saw him on the field in the preseason was being utilized at an extremely high rate. And I think that Daniel Jones being on the field is only going to get him more accurate targets and more receptions as the season goes on. You're getting Tyler Warren right now in the 8th round. He could be a league winner in fantasy football in terms of drafting a tight end late and then him being very productive in his rookie year. And he's not Brock Bowers, very different skill set. He's going to get his points different ways, but it does look like he's going to have the target volume to still be very productive as a rookie. In a similar situation, Joe Flacco is, of course, the starter for the Browns. It was unquestioned at a certain point in the preseason. Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, obviously losing out on that job. But because Joe Flacco is the starting quarterback from the Browns, one of the under-the-radar headlines that nobody's talking about is the fact that David Njoku, when he did play with Joe Flacco a couple years ago, and you remember, in those last few weeks, 4 or 5 weeks, whenever it was that Joe Flacco played, David Njoku was very good. And so Njoku and Flacco clearly have a connection. And Joe Flacco, if you'll remember, likes targeting Njoku a lot. And so I think if you're somebody who got Njoku in the 9th round or is currently thinking about drafting Njoku, and you can punt tight end and get David Njoku later, I think Joe Flacco being the solidified starter in Cleveland, which shocked me to no end, let me tell you. I did not think they would roll with him as the starter after all, but whatever. I think that if you drafted David Njoku, I think this is a very good thing for you. And David Njoku looks like somebody who could end up being, again, very productive compared to where you're drafting him right now in fantasy football drafts. Moving over to the Houston Texans backfield, we still haven't heard hardly anything about Joe Mixon's injury. And to me, this is a huge red flag. I talked about this in a video that we released, a week ago and said, I'm basically not drafting Joe Mixon. I'm very worried about the injury, and I'm not quite sure he's going to play this year. You'll remember in the Flock League draft, I did take Woody Marks. It does look like Woody Marks is not going to have an immediate impact in that backfield, at least early in the season. Nick Chubb, I think, rested for this game. And so this week, as of this week, it looks like Nick Chubb is going to be the starter there. You should not forget, though, if you have Nick Chubb, that Nick Chubb, all the reports about him are that he is not fast, he is not moving well, and that he looks slow and old, and which shouldn't surprise you for a guy that blew up his knee like he did. And so, because of that, if you have Nick Chubb already and you've drafted him, I would look to sell Nick Chubb. I would probably look to sell Nick Chubb. Either Joe Mixon's going to come back, they'll trade for somebody, or I think maybe they end up giving it to Dameon Pierce or somebody like that. It doesn't look like it's going to be Woody Marks, but I'm not in on Nick Chubb this year at all, even though it does look like he is the starter for now, so it could be a sell high situation in fantasy football as well. If you're interested right now, we actually have our best deal of the season with our season pass over on the site. It gives you everything you need for your fantasy football leagues, whether you've already drafted or whether you're going to be drafting. We have all the resources to win your drafts and win your fantasy football league, so you can check it out. It's $34. It's literally the best deal in fantasy football. And again, if you use code DOMAIN when you sign up, you get a bunch of exclusives from us as well. And so use code DOMAIN, get 30% off, and then make sure you get all the access to the site for the season pass while it's still going on. Chris Olave, let's talk about Chris Olave a little bit. Playing out of the slot for the New Orleans Saints tonight, which is a little bit interesting. I was reading a PFF article that actually Chris Olave, when he's played out of the slot in the past, like early in his career, 2.23 yards per route run from the slot compared to 2.16 out wide. And so when you're looking at some of the other guys there, Rashid Shaheed obviously back, Brandon Cooks is playing as well, and they also just traded for Devon Vele. And who knows what they're going to, Devon Vele, maybe they end up putting him in the slot and they move Chris Olave back out wide a little bit. But Chris Olave playing in the slot, I think, is an interesting storyline that we need to track. Right now, you've been getting Chris Olave in your fantasy football drafts pretty late. I think Chris Olave is a very good upside shot at that point, and I think Chris Olave, I think they may use him differently than they have. Obviously, the number one thing is making sure that he stays healthy and making sure that he's on the field. Staying with the New Orleans Saints, Kendre Miller looks like the clear number 2 back in New Orleans. And this is significant because a lot of people are fading Alvin Kamara this year. Maybe it's because of injury. Maybe it's because they think this is the year he falls off, whatever. But if you are fading Alvin Kamara, in my opinion, you need to be very in on Kendre Miller, who looks like the clear number 2 back in New Orleans. Cam Akers is also there. Cam Akers has been having the third round duties in that offense, but it looks like Kendre Miller is going to be on the field. In fact, in this game, Kendre Miller actually stayed on the field for third down reps as well. And so, look, Kendre Miller is a guy where if you really do think that Kamara will miss time, and Kamara has not been exempt from injury in the last couple of years, as soon as that happens, Kendre Miller is going to be the top waiver target in everybody's leagues. If Alvin Kamara were to miss any time at all, we would be sitting here on the channel talking about Kendre Miller and how much of your fab you should dump on this guy. And so because of that, I think if you have a little bit of a deeper league, I think that it's probably worth picking up Kendre Miller. In fact, I probably need to see if he got selected in the Flock League, because if he's not selected, I probably need to pick him up or try to pick him up right now. So Kendre Miller looks like the running back 2 in New Orleans, which is good news for those who have already drafted him as well. Let's go to RJ Harvey. This one's interesting because remember, RJ Harvey actually started the first preseason game, but then it came out, it was like, oh, actually it was because J.K. Dobbins couldn't find his helmet. And I was like, yeah, that's probably a load of crap. Well, evidently it's not a load of crap because J.K. Dobbins hasn't really played in the last 2 preseason games, so they've basically been sitting him. R.J. Harvey has, but R.J. Harvey's role in that offense has clearly been the early down back guy there. Tyler Beatty's also in that offense. Jaleel McLaughlin sat out with J.K. Dobbins. And so very interesting. This could just be a case of Sean Payton getting his rookie some reps here, and I think that's probably what it is. I still have a pretty high degree of confidence that R.J. Harvey come the first game of the season is going to have some role in that offense. Now, whether or not, J.K. Dobbins gets the early snaps or not, I'm not quite sure yet. I mean, the pattern of sitting these guys would suggest that it would be J.K. Dobbins taking the early down stuff and then maybe Jaleel McLaughlin taking the passing down stuff. But right now, R.J. Harvey did get a fair amount of work, so he's clearly in the mix. My guess is this was just Sean Payton getting his rookie running back some reps. I'm not freaking out about R.J. Harvey next. I will say I bet his stock does go down because of him playing through the preseason, but I think R.J. Harvey by the end of the year will be the clear-cut starter in Denver, and I think Sean Payton, who again is a very intentional drafter, will use him as he planned to as well. Now, the Packers running back room is a little bit interesting here because actually, when you're looking at the running back snaps, remember Emmanuel Wilson last year was the guy who was backing up Josh Jacobs. He was Josh Jacobs' handcuff last year. This year, actually, Chris Brooks has been the one that's been getting snaps over Emmanuel Wilson. Actually came out of the game. It went Josh Jacobs, then Chris Brooks, and then Emmanuel Wilson played the rest. And so if you're looking for a Jacobs handcuff, again, in deeper leagues, 14 teams, 12 teams with lots of bench, Chris Brooks is the handcuff for Josh Jacobs. Now, Josh Jacobs not somebody that we're expecting to miss a ton of time with injury. He's not necessarily been a guy that's going to be injured a lot for your fantasy football team, but in terms of these running backs that are running back 2s, the backups that could at any second in time become the starting running back on their team, like I mentioned with Kendre Miller, they do become very valuable because at the second that their starting running back is injured, these guys are top of the list because it doesn't really matter if they are an elite running back, a mid running back, whatever, if they're getting volume, if they're a warm body getting touches, they are going to be valued, and they're going to be productive most of the time in fantasy football leagues as well. The Seahawks played the Packers this week, and really the only only thing from the Seahawks, I think Torrey Horton was out with injury. So we didn't see a lot of him, but he's still a sleeper pick. Obviously, I think he's going to have some kind of role there. In the running back room, it does seem like Kenneth Walker has been practicing this week, which is great. I still think that Charbonnet is going to carve out a very decent role there. And I think Kenneth Walker's injury has been like a nagging foot injury or something, is something that you're going to want to monitor into the next couple of weeks. However, it looks like he's going to be good to go. Okay, let's talk about the Dolphins here. So obviously, Devon Achane has a calf strain. Not a fan of the calf strain. Not a fan of the calf strain at all. He's been missing time, okay? And then Jalen Wright, he also did not play because he left the field in practice. He left the field with trainers. He was limping or hobbling off or something like that. And because of that, it looks like Ollie Gordon was the guy who got all of the snaps. In fact, he did. He played all the snaps with the starters in this preseason game. The Dolphins actually still played Jalen Waddle in this game. They did play Tua for 17 snaps. And every snap that Tua was on the field, Ollie Gordon was on the field as well. And Ollie Gordon actually ran 7 routes in this game, showing that if they have to, they're going to use him in this capacity. Now, whether or not the Dolphins go out and try to pick somebody else up, I don't know. I do think Ollie Gordon is somebody you should be looking at potentially on your waivers or late in your fantasy football drafts. You'll remember in the Flock League, I took him, I think, round 14. My very last turn there, I took him as my second to last player, him and Efton Chisholm. And so with Ollie Gordon, I think because of the situation there, he could just end up being exactly what I just said, a warm body that's getting carries. I'm not super high on Ollie Gordon, the talent, but it doesn't matter because if he ends up getting snaps there, he will be relevant, and he might be somebody you just want to pick up right now. In fact, I probably would picking him up right now. Speaking of Efton Chisholm, let's talk about the Patriots here real quick. We didn't really learn a ton in terms of who's going to be the starting wide receivers there. I think obviously Stephon Diggs is going to be somebody that is going to start there from day one. That's why they brought him in. But in terms of everybody else, I mean, we didn't really learn a whole lot. Efton Chisholm continued to produce throughout the preseason, but did not play again this week, and so we didn't really learn anything new about him. In fact, the Patriots pretty much played none of their wide receivers this week that are actually even potentially getting cut. You saw Jalen Polk get hurt. I bet Jalen Polk at this point, I don't know what they're going to do with him, but I'm not sure he's going to be super productive, and so we'll see what that wide receiver room looks like at the end of the day. But let's talk about the Jaguars running back room. Look, the Jaguars rested Tootin, they rested Etienne, and they rested Bigsby. At first, it was like, oh, Tootin looks like he's going to be the starter. Then it was, oh, Bigsby's probably the starter. Tootin's been mixed in there, but he's never really been mentioned as a starter. It looked like he's the clear number 3, at least for now. I do think Tootin is still worth rostering in your leagues because I think that backfield is still wide open. I don't think Tank Bigsby or Travis Etienne are home run talents by any stretch of the imagination. So I think that, if you can still roster Bashul Tootin in your leagues, you should probably do that. One other thing that's very encouraging from the preseason, Najee Harris actually remains on the non-football injury list. Evidently, he started running at practice, but I mean, this is a running back that can't see. I don't know if you've ever tried playing running back, but doing it while you can't see, I would imagine, is probably pretty hard. And so because of that, it looks like Amari Hampton, at least early in the season, is going to have that room pretty much all to himself, which in my opinion is a good thing because I think what's going to happen, he's going to come out, he's going to dominate, he's going to be better than Najee ever was, and then he's going to prove, hey, I can handle a bell cow workload. Just give me the ball and good things are going to happen. And so for my Amari Hampton share, which I drafted him high in the Flock League, I'm very happy for that. But still, we need to consider the fact that when Najee comes back, there could be some kind of split backfield there to the tune of maybe Hampton losing a little bit of production. I still think Amari Hampton is going to be the dominant running back 1 in that offense. So this is one of the most memorable preseasons that I can remember. Actually, we saw more of the starters than we typically do in any preseason. Obviously, lots of takeaways here. But, keep in mind, we are only a week and a half from seeing these guys on the field. Don't do anything with your fantasy football team to overreact. And again, be smart with your waivers. Continue to roster those backup third-string running backs just in case something changes and they become the starter instantly. That would be my advice to you. So do me a huge favor if you appreciated the video. I would appreciate it if you drop a like. Really helps me out. Really helps Nate out as well. Make sure you subscribe as well. We really appreciate that. And again, if you want to check out the season pass, I've got it linked in the comments. Next time we see football on an NFL field, it will be real football, and that is reason to rejoice. Peace out, and we'll see you later.